After more than 85 witnesses, it all comes down to Bernardo's word against the word of his ex-wife, Karla Homolka. He says she did it. She says he did it in their master bedroom with a black electrical cord.
Did you kill Elizabeth Bain on June the 19th, 1990?
Well, it's a loaded question. I mean, are we going to go back and go through the time sequence of what happened in my life?
It was Bernardo who first thought of dismembering Leslie Mahaffey's body. And she said she was merely repeating Bernardo's words when she wrote to a friend that they couldn't live in Toronto because there are too many immigrants and too much crime, or when she criticized her parents for only paying for half of this lavish wedding.
We were a good team, you know. We were the best team, you know. We were great, man. United we stand, together we fall.
3 teen girls killed. Over a dozen more were R-worded, all by the hands of this 26-year-old and 20-year-old Karla Homolka. A true match made in hell. Are serial R-worders born, or are they made? To try and understand the case of Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka, we must start from the very beginning. Karla Leanne Homolka was one of the 3 daughters of Carl and Dorothy Homolka, residing peacefully in the town of St. Catharines, Ontario. She was obsessed with the notion of happily ever after since early childhood and treasured her collections of Barbie dolls, hoping one day that she too would meet her Ken. At the tender age of 17, Karla and her friend attended a business convention at a hotel restaurant, which is where she met her match. This man was hot, flirtatious, and wouldn't back down until he got Karla upstairs to her room, which he did. That man was Paul Kenneth Bernardo. Now, unlike Karla's normal life, Paul had a disturbed childhood, stemming from his dad, who was charged with R-word against his own family. His mother was a victim of depression and agoraphobia, but despite his family's dysfunction, he turned out to be a charming young man. That charm, however, was not put to good use. Bernardo's day job as a sales guy deeply affected him, as he would practice pickup techniques on young women, and was fairly successful. To the women, he was charming at first, but behind closed doors, he got very rough and aggressive. It was around October of 1987 that Karla and Paul hit it off, and unlike the women in Paul's past, Karla encouraged his sadistic behavior. She didn't even mind that he was 6 years her senior. To her, he was handsome, charming, educated, and well off. He was a true Ken she always dreamed of. The only problem was that the apple didn't fall far from the tree. Karla knew what her boyfriend craved, which is why she became his supplier of cuffs, collars, drugs, and all those other disturbing things that you'd find in 50 Shades of Grey. It didn't bother her that her boyfriend was an aggressive, sexual monster. She just wanted to fulfill his urges, even if it meant putting a loved one on the line. Around 1990, Paul had lost his job as an accountant and was smuggling cigarettes. He was also spending long periods of time with Homolka's family, who, like Karla, saw his charm and nothing sinister. Now, even though Paul was engaged to Karla at the time, he became obsessed with her 15-year-old sister, Tammy Lynn Homolka. The shameless fiancée and elder sister, Karla, would help Paul break the window in her sister's room, allowing him to enter her room and touch himself while she slept. And throughout this ordeal, Karla facilitated. Karla was working at a veterinary clinic and had unrestricted access to a number of surgical-quality sedatives. She would steal Valium, Halothane, or any kind of anesthetic which would knock the victim unconscious. For her own baby sister, she mixed Halothane in a rum and eggnog cocktail. After Tammy lost consciousness, the two did the deed in the basement while the parents slept upstairs, not knowing the damage happening downstairs. She taped the whole thing of Paul doing truly morbid things to Tammy. When Tammy regained consciousness, she started to choke on her own vomit. The couple tried to revive her and called 911 after hiding evidence. Just a few hours after she was admitted at St. Catharines General Hospital, Tammy was pronounced dead. And even though the police saw the couple vacuuming and washing laundry in the middle of the night, and even after they noticed the chemical burn on Tammy's face, her cause of death was ruled as accidental. The biggest part of Paul's crimes was the sedatives supplied by Karla, which were used aggressively on Paul's victims, who he'd pick up at random bars, misuse, and then be gone before they suspect anything had happened. After every vulgar incident, Paul and Karla stayed in the clear. At the time, the district of Toronto named Scarborough was on high alert for Paul's reign of terror, as the criminal was nicknamed the Scarborough Rapist. Around May of 1990, one of the victims gave the police an accurate description of her attacker. Around November, Paul was asked to come in because of how much he resembled the composite, and he complied by giving his DNA samples, and after some basic questioning, he was set free. And just like that, Paul avoided justice one more time. But next time, Paul wouldn't be so lucky. On June 15, 1991, Paul was driving around to steal some license plates for his cigarette smuggling business when he spotted a 14-year-old girl named Leslie Mahaffey. The two talked about why she was out in the late night, to which she replied that her parents had locked her out of the house for breaking curfew. Unfortunately, that wasn't the only punishment she endured that night, as Paul forced her into his car, blindfolded her, and took her back to his house on Bayview Drive. Mahaffey was held hostage for 24 hours, during which she was subjected to Paul's vulgarity and Karla's lethal dose of halcyon. Instead of letting her go, even after she complied with all his sick demands, she was strangled to death. Right after this horrific act, the two were hosting a family dinner the next day. While Karla and her family talked about the wedding that was happening in 2 weeks, Paul dumped the remains in Lake Gibson. On April 19, 1992, Paul and Karla went out driving in search of another victim, which is when they encountered 15-year-old Kristen French on her way home from school. They picked her up and held her captive for 3 days at their home, where she endured the same horrors as Mahaffey. Through all of this, perhaps the only thing more appalling than the duo's crimes was the police's laziness. Remember when we told you that Paul had submitted his DNA samples? Turns out they never tested it. They were taken in November of 1990, and the authorities never tested them until December of 1992. After they did, it matched that of the Scarborough Rapist. In 1992, Homolka and Bernardo found themselves in the hot seat multiple times, grilled by police regarding the Scarborough Rapist case, the tragic demise of Tammy Homolka, and Bernardo's unsettling habit of stalking women prior to French's abduction. On May 12th, Bernardo underwent a brief interrogation by an NRP sergeant and constable, and despite his candid admission about being previously questioned in connection to the Scarborough Rapist, authorities deemed him an improbable suspect. Meanwhile, Bernardo and Homolka seek to legally change their name by adopting the surname Teal, plucked straight from a character in the unsettling 1988 film Criminal Law. Even if the police wanted to move in on Paul, there was very little evidence to issue an arrest warrant. The only way Paul could face the heat is if someone confesses about his monstrosity. That someone was Karla herself. Karla's co-workers noted multiple bruises on Karla, and while she claimed that it was from an automobile accident, it was found that Bernardo beat her with a flashlight. Her parents took her to the hospital, where she gave a statement to the NRP about how Bernardo, the Ken to her Barbie, the man of her dreams, was a violent maniac.
It was great. It was really good. It was pretty well the same all the way through, except we became emotionally closer. And there were never any problems. There were very rarely any problems. We had a couple of arguments, but just normal arguments.
So he wasn't loving. He acted like he didn't care that we got married. He told me that he was a rapist. And it just was not like the kind of wedding night where those things go bad.
Being physically and verbally abusive to me at that time, as you know. He kept on pushing and pushing and pushing, and finally I said okay, and thinking that it wouldn't be, it would just be one time, that's it. It would shut him up, and he would stop bothering me and stop hurting me. I decided that we needed the halothane. I guess it would probably be me knowing more about anesthetics and the fact that sleeping pills might not keep her completely asleep. This was my idea, not his, was to call the drugstore and tell them that I needed it for clinic use. The reason I told them for clinic use was because that way I didn't have to give a name. All I had to do was give a doctor's name.
Those burns are possibly chemical in nature and antemortem.
The only chemical that was near her was the halophane. It was not placed on her face directly. It was held, as I said, like this far away.
She's trying to cover her tracks while incriminating Paul. But, seeing as everything was on tape, there's no doubt in the detective's mind that Karla was an accessory in Tammy's murder.
Oh, and I was really mad, too, because when I took Buddy out, there were 2 champagne glasses on the dining room table. And we had these really expensive champagne glasses from France, which we never used. He had those out. The 2 of them had been drinking champagne from those glasses. I was really mad. And then she took a breath. And that freaked me out even more. He should have slapped me in the face because I was really hysterical then. So he went over to her and he did the same thing. He strangled her more. And I think I watched that time. Because what the hell? She's dead anyway.
Now, while the detectives are getting some strong, incriminating details against Paul, this confession is rooted in a plea deal which will reduce Karla's sentence. That also explains why she's humanizing herself and portraying herself as a victim of Paul's psychotic nature. She could have used her family's help to expose Paul and his wicked ways from the very start, so why did she wait this long? The more you hear from her, the more you'll see why the plea deal with Karla was extremely controversial. Later on, she took the police through her Bayview home where the 2 teenagers were murdered. She herself wore a schoolgirl outfit to give the detectives a vivid description of what Mahaffey and French had to go through. And while she was staging the incident, she had some questions regarding the search.
Sure. Can you answer a question for me? Was any of the furniture damaged as a result of the investigation?
Not that I'm aware of, though.
Okay, good. Sorry.
She even took them upstairs to the bathroom where they cleaned French's body of evidence, and then inquired about her perfume samples.
Perfume samples. I don't have any of that stuff.
So where are all these articles now?
Where Paul's lawyer took them.
You're saying Paul's lawyer took a number of articles from you?
Well, from what I understand, his lawyer took basically everything. This is where we carried Leslie downstairs.
And as she took them to the basement, she had another inquiry on behalf of her sister.
Can I ask you a question? Can I
I'm
have
afraid I can't answer
that
you.
book? My sister wants it. Or does it have to stay there?
That has to stay for now, but we can make those arrangements.
Okay, thank you. And my Christmas tree.
The reason why she inquired so specifically about these items is because even though a plea deal was struck, she knew there was evidence which would involve her in all 3 murders, and even as an assistant to the Scarborough rapist. In many of her interviews, she kept repeating how unhappy she was in the marriage, and that this was something that started way before the wedding.
Hiding abuse. Every time I went to my parents, I was totally unhappy because, on the way there, Paul would be lecturing me. If you say or do anything to make them think that we're not happy, I'm going to kill you. You're going to get it. He had beaten me really badly. And my whole face was black and white. The police had photographs of it. He used to make me kneel on the floor in the middle of the bedroom and make me stare straight ahead, and he would walk around me in circles and kick me. I wasn't allowed to look, so I wouldn't know when it was coming.
Bernardo was charged with 2 counts each of kidnapping, unlawful confinement, aggravated sexual assault, and first-degree murder, as well as 1 for dismemberment. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole for at least 25 years and labeled as a dangerous offender, which in Canada means that he will never step outside the segregation unit at Kingston Penitentiary. Homolka got away with a plea bargain deal after admitting to a lesser crime and only got 12 years. This was something Paul thought about a lot while his inmates conspired against him. He knew he wasn't going to survive long in this prison, which is why, in 2005, he confessed that he had assaulted not just 3 women, but 10 other women also. This opened the Scarborough rapist case wide open. In 2005, Paul was interrogated regarding this statement to affirm whether more charges should be in order or not.
I just started this audio tape here. We started the interview at 2:05 p.m. My name is Detective Brad Hoover. Paul, you're not presently being given a caution or anything, and I want you to understand that what you're saying to us today is voluntary. It means if you don't want to talk to us, you don't have to. Your counsel is present, and if you need to speak to him, you certainly can. But I just want to make sure that you understand that what you're saying here is voluntary, and that we're interviewing you as a potential witness. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
Just a little bit of background about the first time we met back last year in April of 2006. That was in regards to a letter that you had sent through the Attorney General's office and filtered down to my office in regards to some admissions that you made about some sexual assaults that you had committed. I'm here to tell you that I have concluded that investigation and that there have been 2 offenses that I have been able to identify, and with the information that you provided to me at that time was able to conclude those matters as having been committed by yourself. So for that, I thank you for that information.
Sorry, you've identified
the offense. No. I've identified the offense that you were talking about, and based on that information, I was able to conclude those cases that actually provided enough information that I was satisfied that you were the person that committed those offenses.
Okay, now what about, does it make sense? What about ones that you thought that I came forward with and you thought that I didn't do? Was there any of those?
There was none that I thought that you didn't do. There was some that I didn't have enough information to either identify the offense because you were unable to provide enough details at that time, or they may not have ever been reported to the police. As you said when we spoke, some of them were, we'll call them minor type offenses, but offenses that may not have been reported to the police.
Okay, problem. I turned on the TV, I waited for Peel Regional to come by. September rolls around, they make a public announcement. It's written on my file here that I lied to police and I did not commit the crimes that I said I committed the offenses in Peel Region.
Okay.
Big problem.
I have spoken to Peel Region, and they have told me that they don't have enough information at this point to identify anything that the letter that was sent to the police, through to the police, wasn't specific enough to identify any offenses. Now, that's something that we can talk about sort of following this interview, and if you want to get into that, we can talk about that.
Well, I've been sitting with this for years, and it's written on my file, and it makes me seem like, oh, he's just this crazy. You guys love doing that. I'm this crazy psychopath and liar. Why was that statement issued? Why didn't they come in and talk to me if they didn't have enough information? We were waiting on that tape. You play that tape back. I asked you guys if Peel Region were going to come in. I sat there month after month after month. No one came. I turned on the TV in September. Peel, declared that Paul Bernardo was, this crazy liar to police. What's the fundamental problem here?
Well,
I know. I mean, justice the Canadian way, and no one comes in, and now you guys are saying that you didn't have enough information.
Well, I can't answer for them specifically as to what they did or didn't do. I can tell you that because they're a separate police department, I don't have any control over what investigation that they did do. I can tell you that I have spoken with an investigator in Peel Region, and they have told me that at this point they don't have enough information to move forward. They haven't been able to identify any offense that was specifically talked about.
That statement you're giving me is much different from the public statement they said, which said I was a liar.
Okay, well, I don't.
There's 90 days if they didn't come in, if they didn't have enough information, why don't you come in and get the information?
Absolutely.
I mean, either I'm lying or I'm not lying. And this goes to the crux of this argument. Either I'm a liar to you, I'm a liar to you right now about everything, like I did to Peel Regional, according to their story, or I'm not. And, I'm not going to sit here, come voluntarily and have people come. You guys ban me from the press. You roll your stories over and constantly say that I'm a liar. I'm a liar. I made a mistake 17 years ago. Said, okay, fine, I did. But now we're talking about today, and you're not going to roll forward that I'm some psychopathic liar sitting in jail claiming other people's responsibilities for other crimes. This is a total cross-examination point. You want to start this thing? lawyer's going to grab a hold of it and say, well, he lied about other crimes. He's a crazy liar. Why didn't you guys resolve this?
This publication ban was imposed on July 5th, 1993, which means that the court limited the details released to the public. This not only protected Karla's claims, but it destroyed any defense that Paul's lawyers could come up with, as it heavily favored Karla. But knowing that there's evidence supporting Paul's guilt, mainly the tapes, there's no use siding with him regarding the ban.
Obviously, directly, we're here today to deal with the Volkovich matter, that you're aware of.
But dealing with me, and it comes down to credibility.
Well, it comes down to credibility. It absolutely does, and that's what we're here to talk about today. And so let's deal with that, and then we can deal with the other stuff afterwards. Is that okay?
No, yeah, go ahead. Just making my point on it because it's going to have to be addressed sometime.
Absolutely, it will.
And it should have been. We dealt with that a year and a bit ago. So,
yeah.
Well, not quite a year, actually.
A little over a year.
Sorry.
I have some questions that were given to me to ask you in relation to the Volkovich matter, Robert Volkovich matter.
Just for context, Robert Volkovich was a man convicted in 1992 for the murder of his girlfriend, Elizabeth Bain. He spent 8 years in prison and nearly a decade to clear his name. He was finally found not guilty in a retrial in 2008, and what supported his release was that Paul Bernardo was the actual culprit.
Before we do that, I just want to say, you understand obviously the importance of telling the truth and the consequences potentially of someone who lies to the police and not telling the truth.
I think we just covered that. Actually, I was referring, you guys tell the truth.
Right. Okay, so we're aware of that. And in this matter, I believe that you had some conversation with your counsel in regards to it. And there has been some discussion about polygraph testing in this matter. Is that true or not true? Do you recall that?
Well, you're opening up cans of worms everywhere.
I'm just asking you a specific question.
That goes back to you guys polygraphed everyone with the Camaro. You didn't polygraph Karla. And in 2 years since, have you guys gone down there and asked her? Have you settled the matter with her? Because you could say I lied or whatever about polygraph, but have you asked her? Because it comes down to a lot of that issue.
Okay.
Have you asked her? Has the Attorney General gone down there?
Okay, I don't know. Let me tell you a little bit. My involvement with this overall investigation of the Volkovich is very limited. The only knowledge that I have is as to what investigation has been done or hasn't been done is specifically what's related to the conversations I've had about this interview here today. Okay. What other witnesses there are, I don't know.
In answer to your question, I don't want to go off on tangents, but all these issues are relevant. I know you think they aren't, but they are. In answer to your question is we had some discussion on it, but when Corcoran from the OPP came down before Karla was released,
right.
I told him, I'd be willing to take a polygraph on anything and everything. Would you in turn, are you going to go down before you release Karla? Just to ask her. She's not going to take it. She's going to fail on all these issues. Did her hand cause death? Blah, blah, blah. Did this Tammy happen in July? It was a girl in January actually kidnapped and got somebody and picked up her bar that she tried to roll over, and all these other issues, all relevant. And then I addressed it to you guys when you came back again. Last year I said, yeah, I'll take a polygraph on anything because I'm not telling a lie on the thing. Again, I asked the question, have you guys gone down? I know Karla's free now. I'm not in the business of putting her in jail. It's not my thing. But my point was, did you ask her the question? Just so we get the story straight. If she refuses, well, there's a reason why she's refusing. And again, you guys couldn't provide the answer. And now, almost a year later, again, you don't provide the answer. So, I don't know what you're asking me. You're asking me to take a polygraph when you aren't willing to ask her?
Well, again, my part of this investigation is limited to what we're saying here today. So the details of all of what other witnesses may or may not have been asked or done, I don't know. And as a potential witness, I'm not allowed to tell you what other people have done. So that I have to sort of be careful about the way that it's answered or even what you think my answer might be.
Yeah, no, I just wanted for the record that I gave you good information, which you guys could have, independent of me, could have verified my story or not. Right. And whether you guys do or do not is your business. Like I said, I'm not a prosecutor. Right. I'm not here to point a finger at anyone. But I showed you where to go. So if you guys don't do that, it's your business. But, to me, it's like, if you didn't, why didn't you? if you want to know the truth about things.
Right.
So
I understand. I understand what you're saying. So
God bless this detective's patience level, because at this point, he's just being an over-smart guy. He's in the penitentiary for a myriad of charges, and the one time he gets to have some FaceTime with the detectives, this is how he talks. You can tell he used this same type of mind games on his victims, especially Karla.
what we're here to talk about today, obviously know that this statement may be used in court or maybe received to court as a voluntary statement.
Yeah.
Okay. A polygraph obviously is not something that's court admissible. I'm not sure if you're aware of that or not.
Yeah,
it's not used in court. So the crust of what we're here to talk about is that it has been suggested that in the continuing case of the disappearance of Elizabeth Bain and the charge of murder against Robert Baltovich, that you are the alternative suspect, or an alternative suspect. Are you aware of that?
yeah.
Did you kill Elizabeth Bain on June the 19th, 1990?
Well, it's a loaded question. I mean, are we going to go back and go through the time sequence of what happened in my life? I mean, I could just give a yes or no answer, but there's a lot of issues about that.
Right.
Karla's my role, who did what, where, when. This is why I said to you guys, go down there to get a polygraph to see if she was telling the truth. Like, why didn't Bevan do it in the first place? I mean, he's polygraphing everyone with a Camaro. Why would he make a deal with someone and not give them a polygraph? It's not incomprehensible to me. Because now my file says her version, and it's a lie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'm not making frivolous points here. I mean, and now you're asking me after you said Peel Regional said I'm lying about this, and then you're saying I'm lying about my profile. You're saying I'm lying if I'm better or not. Now you're saying, hey, did you kill this person? I mean, well, you're saying I'm lying here, here, and here. I could say, no, I didn't. But, I mean, you already said I'm lying here with Peel. You're saying...
Okay. I'm not saying anything about who's lying. I'm simply...
and I've given you directions to go to find the truth.
Right.
No
and
one's done that.
And I've asked, and again, I've told you that I've done investigations on information that you've told me. And as a result of that information, I've been able to verify in my mind where you told me the truth. So if Peel Region is lying about you or someone else is lying about you, I have no control over that. Or
it goes right to credibility.
Well, absolutely it does. And that's, I guess, the easy way that is to, if we can go through, we'll answer the questions. And yes, I hope to be able to go through some timeline to identify where you were, what you were doing specifically in relation to this case.
Anyways, I know I'm giving you guys a hard time about certain things, but I mean, really, I'm a human being. When you guys do all these things, I've got it. Anyways, I'll try and truncate it a little bit more. But anyways, the answer to that is no. But the 800-pound gorilla in the room that's a life 25 sentence. It really comes down to credibility, and not only credibility, but then again, timeline. I mean, between what Karla's and my roles were respectively, and this and that. The answer is no to that question.
Did you have anything to do with her disappearance?
No.
Did you know Elizabeth Bain? Had you ever met her?
I'm going to answer that with I don't remember. Because if I did or I didn't, I don't remember. But I know an ex-girlfriend. I'm trying to say it, but I guess I don't remember.
You obviously are aware of her disappearance.
Sorry.
Do you recall when you became aware of this?
Best I can recollect is afterwards. Didn't follow this much.
The date, obviously, June the 19th, 1990 was.
But other than that, I don't remember. Maybe I heard about it before, but I can't recall if I did or not. But I remember in jail, I had newspapers after that fact. That's not something.
We'll sort of get into that a little bit when you. I hope to go through a bit of a timeline with you as to some things that may jog your memory as to
We're talking
back in that. I mean, if you asked me what I was doing 3 weeks ago on Tuesday, I probably couldn't tell you unless you put some reference to it. So we'll hopefully be able to do that. And again, obviously, June the 19th, 1990. Do you know what you were doing that day? know.
Most of the people who know this interview know it from Jordan Peterson's talks because he calls Paul Bernardo, quote, the CEO of a meeting in that video.
That's enlightening, man. Paul Bernardo, he's like the CEO of a meeting in that video, you know? He gives the cops hell, he gives the lawyers hell, he protests his innocence. He basically tells them that they're rude and untrustworthy because they don't trust him because he did a few little things 17 years ago. And he gets away with it, a few little things, right? I mean, he killed a bunch of people, including the sister of his girlfriend at the time. And, you know, he was a repeat sexual offender and murderer. It's like, but he basically goes, well, you know, that's a long time ago. It's like, we're past that, aren't we? I mean, I'm having a discussion with you. I'm trying to help you solve some crimes, which, by the way, I committed, but we won't bring that up. You know, and you're accusing me of being a liar. Like, you're not playing fair. What's up with you? And then when they answer, he looks at his fingernails, which is like, that's a lovely little manipulative thing, because it basically means whatever happens to be under my fingernail at the moment is much higher priority than listening to your foolish story. And you watch, you'll see people do that to you. And then you get a little insight into what they're up to.
So chances are we won't be able to hear any admission of guilt, but we will get to see a master class in manipulation.
I have a document here in front of me that references some points in time around the June of 1990 period from police investigation. This is what indicates you may have been involved with, or may have certain things that you may have done. I'd like to go through a couple of them that sort of assist you in remembering what you were doing back in 1990. The first part of June 1990, actually June the 1st, Karla had a doctor's appointment where she was complaining of pains in her right side. Perhaps she had something to do with a rabies shot. Does that ring any bells? No. In the first part of June, you had a Nissan 240 SX. Is that correct?
Yeah.
You were making several trips into the United States, June 2nd, June 3rd, June 10th, June 16th. I think at that point you were involved with cigarette smuggling and things like that, from what I recall. Someone said no.
No, that would be. No, that wasn't until after. So.
Okay. So, making several trips to the States within a couple of days. That's something.
When we started the relationship, we were going over all the time, so just for personal reasons. So.
On June the 16th, you shopped at Rough Hewen. That's in the Niagara Falls, United States. Does that store sound familiar to you?
Yeah, it sounds familiar. I have no idea those dates, but
okay.
If you got a receipt
I think there must be a receipt. And again, I don't have all the details. I'm just going by what's on the sheet. A black expandable binder. Is that?
I can't recall 100%, but
okay. That would have been around the same time. That was about a week prior to if you purchased one of those Elizabeth Bain ones.
I have no idea when I purchased it. I just recall I had something like that, like an accordion binder. June the 16th, again, this has been the same day in St. Catharines, you attended a movie, Back to the Future 3. Do you recall when that movie came out? No. There's a receipt for a cell phone purchased at a Radio Shack at the Town and Country Mall at 6366 Yonge Street. You remember buying a cell phone? I know I bought a cell phone around that time because when I declared bankruptcy, I handed my other one in. And I bought the Radio Shack. I don't know the dates.
Okay. That would have been the day after Elizabeth Bain went missing. Do you remember anything you were involved with around that time? You say you were going bankrupt, so what type of activity you were involved in throughout that day?
The only thing I remember bankruptcies that happened around a couple days before the sexual assault that the composite came up with. That was, but if I recollect correctly, it was 2 days before I filed for that. But I couldn't even tell you that date. I was going to sometime. What date did you say that was? June?
June the 16th of 1990.
When was that sexual assault? The one with the cops? Was it 24th? What date did that happen?
There was a sexual assault in May of 1990.
Is that the cops that went to May?
I'm thinking that it is, but it doesn't say that specifically here. But shortly after that,
my timeline's off.
At the end of June.
He's almost mocking this investigation by not thinking hard enough and not giving straight answers against the limited information the detective has. It's hard to say whether the detective is intentionally withholding the complete information to get his admission of guilt, but one thing's for sure, it's not working.
1990, that was the original, when someone identified you potentially as a Scarborough rapist.
When was that?
That was June 28th of 1990. Lori Homolka's 19th birthday was June the 22nd. Do you recall her 19th birthday?
I know it was around that time, but I don't specifically recall that birthday.
The only reason I would maybe say that she was a legal drinking agent, perhaps.
Drinking agent. Way before that.
June the 21st, so just the day after you bought the cell phone, you made a purchase at
I'm sorry, you were saying what, 19th was this girl's?
June 19th was the day she wrote the cell phone.
What day did I buy that?
June 20th was the day you bought the cell phone. June 21st.
See, I must have declared bankruptcy around then because I got that cell phone in hand, but I had to hand all my items in to the trustee, and I had a Panasonic cell phone, and I got the Radio Shack. So it would have been right around the same time. I don't think I would have a month without it. I don't think so. I might have, but anyways, I don't know. It was a while ago, so memories a bit fuzzy.
Yeah. May the 29th, which was just before that, or about a month before that. That was the day that the police released the cops.
Oh, so it was May. I lost a month.
Yeah. So that was.
See what happens when you lock a guy up for 15 years and leave with stuff. It never gets fuzzy. So I guess I waited a month to get the cell phone.
About a month to get the cell phone. Did you recall anything? What were you doing? Sorry, during that month?
Probably the same thing as they're going across the border for the recreational stuff. I know Tammy happened in July. That was I think the third week of July for the first time. But this was back. Anyway, it was
so just prior to Tammy's birthday, there was some shopping at a Canadian Tire store on Shepherd Avenue. Lori's birthday. 2 times in one day, you went to Canadian Tire on Shepherd Avenue. 1019 Shepherd Avenue. Normally shop at Canadian Tire stores.
Back then. That's before all these super centers, Walmarts and stuff.
Do you ever recall having any conversations about the disappearance of Elizabeth Bain?
No.
Despite the memory jogs, he continues to deny and swirl his chair as the detective keeps getting his series of I don't knows. Perhaps the only accusation that is more than just an accusation is what Karla claims to be his involvement in Bain's case.
If I played you it's going to play you a short audio clip. It's a conversation that you had, or a conversation between Tony Ward, who was an investigator with the Toronto Police, and Karla Homolka. I'm just going to play this, see if this sounds familiar or if it jogs your memory as to any conversation you may have had.
Has there been any discussion ever about baby's disappearance?
I think the only thing that he ever said about her was that her boyfriend did it or something like that. But there wasn't any real extensive discussion. But he talked about like all of the women that were disappearing.
And again, that was a conversation between investigator Tony Moore with the Toronto Police Service and Karla Homolka. Is that conversation, is that something you may recall saying that to Karla or talking about that?
Well, you know, she went down with Paul did it. Catchphrase was in trial, Paul did it. It's Paul. And she's continuing right there. She's going, you know, with that. The fact of the matter is I didn't pay attention to anything. I didn't watch the news back then. I was too busy doing other things. I didn't pay attention. Like the profile is a serial killer, pays attention to all the news media. This is narcissistic personality, blah blah blah, all that crap. I don't know anything about this case now. I don't know if this guy did it. I don't even care. I'm not a prosecutor, you know, do the right thing for society, blah blah blah. I don't know if he did it. I don't have the facts to it. Who knows if he did it? And I certainly didn't. So to say that for me to make, she's alleging that I made a statement. The boyfriend did it. Well, you know, some cases I have followed because I'm in jail and I have nothing else to do but watch TV. But I weigh the facts. You know, I take, you know, like did OJ do it, for example? Right. You weigh the facts about, you know, whether he did or not, he got off. So that's a lot. But I would have had to weigh the facts. I don't know the facts in these circumstances, so there's no way I can make a statement such as that. How could I say he did it if I don't know the facts of the case? So no, she's incorrect.
And it may depend on when that conversation took place between her and the investigator.
Well, Ward, wasn't he back when the deal was made? That was Ward, if I remember reading the transcripts, that was the name from the day one. When she signed her 12-year deal, no polygraph required. Hey, I'm giving you the truth there. You guys can prove me wrong. Go down there, ask her. You'll get a no. I keep telling you, no one does it. But you know, so that sounds like a conversation. But that's what you do. You want to blame it all on the other person. You know, you can take that scenario. It's like psychopaths.
Do you know Robert Balkovich?
Just seen him on the outside flash on TV. Okay, so I purposely avoided this case.
Right.
I don't like this shit in my mind. You know what I mean? You know, anything to do with, you know, unfortunately when Karla came out, I watched and tried to discern truth back between fiction a couple of years ago. But otherwise, you know, I don't like to get into these things. I've had 100 lifetimes full of this stuff. You know, so and I don't want my mind poisoned with this and this and this. So in this case, I kind of do as much as possible. But I have seen this space.
Right. Anything else you would like to tell us about this investigation? Okay, the time now is 2:35, and we'll conclude this portion of our interview.
It is unlikely that Bernardo will ever be released in any capacity due to his dangerous offender status. Even though he became eligible for parole in 2018, his application was continuously turned down. In fact, the only update was in May of 2023 when he was transferred to a medium security facility in Quebec, which raised more controversy among the public, but it was considered a sound decision by the board. Meanwhile, Karla Homolka was released from prison in 2005 and has been trying to dodge the public eye by relocating to various locations. But as of January 2020, she lives in Salaberry du Valleyfield without her husband or children. Now, if you think this case was horrific, you need to check out my video on the BDSM cannibal.